Hi, welcome back to Sail Juice. My guest today is a sailor whose list of accomplishments include 14 North American championships, 5 world championships, both in the DN, and recently he's just won for the second time a U.S. Nationals. First of all, some introductions. My name is Mike Madge. I'm coming in from Thunder Bay, Ontario, and with me is Ron Cherry. Hi, Ron. How you doing?
Doing just great.
And where are you coming to? Where are you coming from today? Here, where are we talking to you?
I'm just sitting in my office at home.
So you're Detroit
Yep.
right now. Nice.
Yep.
So you recently, I just mentioned, you just won your second U.S. Nationals. I guess there's only been 2 U.S. Nationals, right?
That's correct. Because of the pandemic, it made it difficult. Number one, for the Europeans to come over and even the Canadians to come here. Right now, it's easier for the Canadians to come here, but for people from the United States to go to Canada, you got to go jump through all kinds of hoops and testing. So part of the reason that they did not, call us the North Americans is because we wouldn't be able to sail in Canada, because it would be very hard for everybody to be able to go into Canada to race the North. So that's why they end up having a second U.S. Nationals, all because of the pandemic. So
the U.S. Nationals, you just won. It started off, it was a week-long event. You started off in Madison, Wisconsin. You didn't actually get started. That was the primary location. But the event was scheduled to start on a Sunday, but you guys didn't actually get started to a Thursday. And then not only a different city, different location, a whole different state. You ended up in Peru, Illinois. So what happened there?
Well, actually, the regatta was scheduled for the Central Lakes, which is Michigan and Ohio. And with the different snowstorms that had gone through, we had a lot of good ice on smaller lakes, but nothing on lakes that were actually big enough to race. And, they were considering having the U.S. Nationals on Walled Lake, but it's a pretty small lake. If the wind's out of the right direction, you can definitely get over a mile course, but in a lot of wind directions, you wouldn't be able to get a mile course. And then there's parking and for 70 boats and all that kind of stuff that was going to be a problem. And there's 8 people on the board of directors that look over the options as far as weather and potential sites. And they voted to go to Madison. And yes, there was snow due to Madison, but it wasn't supposed to be a lot. But there were options north and south of Madison to be able to pull a regatta off. So they voted for Madison, and we headed out there, and we got there Saturday morning, and everybody was sailing, and a lot of people were out sailing, but it was blowing 20. And they were really flying around out there, and there were some small heaves, and there were some ice blocks from ice fishermen out there, and blowing that hard. It was, if you hit one of those things, you could do some damage. So I elected to not sail till the next day when the regatta was actually supposed to start. And Saturday night, we got 5 inches of snow. And so when that happened, they ended up, and it was very cold, so they postponed the skipper's meeting and the start so they could evaluate the ice and then go and look at other sites. Part of the thing that 5 inches of snow did was it kind of hid the hazards. And so they ended up sending out groups north and south to Green Lake and down to Senneschwein to see if we could find some ice that was going to be safe. And my hat's off to the guys who went out and scouted for this ice, because when they went out there Monday morning, it was cold. It was 10 degrees below zero that night. So they went out there, it was still below zero when they were putting their boats on the ice and going and looking at these lakes. And they finally decided late Monday that our best option was Senneschwein, because number one, it was going to be super cold up at Green Lake, and they had a heave that went right down the middle of the lake and split the lake in half. So it was going to be very hard, depending on the wind direction, to get a mile course. Where Lake Senneschwein, they were able to get a mile course in any direction. Plus, being 4 hours further south, it was warmer down there. So then they decided that they weren't going to start the regatta until Wednesday morning. And I don't know if I just lost you or not. All my screen just went blank.
No, I got you. We got you here. I just sharing the screen with you.
Okay, good. Well, so they decided not to start the regatta until Wednesday morning. And so they started the regatta Wednesday morning. It was very cold again, even down in Senneschwein. And it was very light wind. And the wind came up a little bit in the afternoon to the point where they were able to get at least the mini qualifier race in on Wednesday for the B fleet, where 12 boats move up to the gold fleet. And then on Thursday, we started with the gold fleet races, and we got 3 races in per fleet for the gold and silver on Thursday.
I just want to stop you there, because let me just ask you this. Like, I mean, most of us that have been to regattas, especially softwater regattas, we're familiar with postponements, waiting. But I mean, that's a pretty extensive wait. And I'm wondering, like, how do you keep up your psyche, your focus in something like that? Like, is there times when you're thinking, hey, maybe just pack it in and go home? Or
boy, that really goes through a lot of people's minds. And man, the stress goes away for me as soon as I start racing. Once I'm in the boat, pretty much I know what has to happen. And sometimes you get lucky, sometimes you don't get lucky. You have to be as prepared as you can and have your equipment all ready. But man, the waiting around is very stressful. And there's a lot of people who just say, you know what, I've had enough and I am going home, but the people who waited this one out were rewarded with, 3, 4, 5 days of sailing. I mean, we were actually able to sail on Tuesday before the regatta. And then, we sailed Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday of the regatta. So even though Wednesday was pretty light air, we had good sailing on Thursday and Friday. So, the stress adds up, and the anxiety and all that, anybody who knows me knows I'm not very approachable in the morning. I get pretty wound up inside. So
now your first starting position was a 35 in the 35 spot. Maybe can you explain like how you came about, why 35, how they determine your first starting position?
It's the luck of the draw. Basically, they draw numbers out of a hat for the first starting position. They actually have the computer program that Paul Goodwin developed that shuffles the numbers and comes up with a starting position, including the 12 boats that move up from silver. And I just happen to get, it often happens that I end up starting out on the end. I don't know why, but it worked out good for me because I've kind of been dealing with a bit of a leg injury. So it was nice for me to just lay the boat off and get it going quickly. And I was leading for the first lap of the race, and I got ground down by T and Berger, but was definitely, in the hunt. So that starting position didn't hurt me for that first start.
So for people that aren't familiar, the 35th would be the furthest on the right on port tack, right?
That's correct, Mike. What you do is starting from the leeward mark from the center out on port tack. There's 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, all starting from the center on and then 2, 4, 6, 8 starts on starboard tack going towards the right. So for the first start, they draw for starting positions, and then after that, they it's your finish position that determines your starting position.
So being 35th and out to the right, would be almost like, the pin end start on a regular sailboat race. It allows you to foot off and go for speed in that spot so you were happy with that starting position?
Yep. And the wind had shifted a little bit to the left. So that was kind of a good position to be into. I was able to get, but it was pretty light air and really sticky conditions. I mean, the conditions on Senneschwein, they had about 2 inches of snow, and it got warm, and it got the snow down to just over an inch and a half in the drifts. But it was very stiff snow. You could walk on top of it because of how cold it got later on. We call it styrofoam snow. So it was very sticky conditions, and you needed some wind to be able to power through those sticky conditions. And Thursday was pretty light and puffy and very shifty. And you really had to be a bit on top of it and a bit lucky and patient. You had to, stay patient and do what you know how to do to keep the boat going.
Yeah. So you mentioned you had a bit of a leg injury. So how would you consider you coming off the start? Were you getting clean off the start, or?
When I had to start right next to other boats, I would say no, but that start, I was kind of all by myself. And if I can get the bow down quickly and get the boat going, then I can get up to speed really fast. So that kind of helped being out on the end for me.
And I know I talked to Matt about this, but I just want to get your thoughts on it. A lot of people, they get pretty itchy underwear when it comes to starting positions, and everybody's racing, see where their first start is. Is that something you just learn to accept? It's just like, you can't control it. So, or you get pretty stressed out where you start?
No, I don't let that stress me out. I mean, sometimes you get lucky, sometimes you get unlucky, and you just got to deal with it, and as soon as you get on the race course, you just got to find a way to get yourself clean so you can sail the boat the way you want, get some clear air and go for it. Obviously, you still want to try to minimize tacks if it's possible. So.
And unlike, when you guys are doing a race, what's an average race taking? 14 minutes, 12, 14 minutes. Is that about right?
Well, in this condition, it was a lot more because the tacking angles and jibing angles were a lot wider in the light air and the sticky conditions. So, we were probably, doing 3 laps and probably doing about 11 minutes a lap. So it was probably pretty close to a half hour per race. Plus, and the B fleet obviously takes longer. So they were even longer doing the races. So
with longer races like that, obviously the shifts become more important than just a strictly boat speed race in those conditions.
Yep, and you got to also know where the puffs are, and that's not easy. You got to kind of have your head on a swivel and be looking around to see who has pressure and try to get over there and take advantage of it.
And the ice conditions, how would you rate the ice conditions that you were on?
Like I said, they were very, very sticky, super slow. I mean, when you're just pushing the boat up to the starting line, you had to lean on the boat in the shroud to push it through the snow. It was so sticky. But once you got moving and had some inertia going with you, you seemed to kind of cut through it a little easier. But you had to get the boat going for sure. And if you were going slow, it was hard to get going fast again. You had to really work at it.
And were there lanes of good ice? Was that coming into consideration on your tactics, where you were looking for good lanes of ice to tack into? Or
yeah, they were few and far between, but because the snow, it was about 90% snow coverage on the ice. But if you could line up a couple of clear patches or use a clear patch just to get up to speed, even a short clear patch, it made a big difference.
So I don't know if a lot of people, obviously the people in the ice boating community are aware, but when you go to an event like that, you're allowed your one hull, one plank, one mast, but you can check in 2 different sails and 3 different sets of skates or runners. Is that correct?
That is correct. You're allowed 2 sails. You're allowed just 1 mast, plank, hull, and boom. And you're allowed 9 runners for the regatta. But like for me, I brought 15 sets of runners that I had worked on before the regatta that I thought would cover any possible condition that I might see. And you don't have to you can use any one of those runners until you've used 9 runners. Once you've used 9, so you got to be a little bit selective. You got to be watching the weather and figuring out what the conditions are likely to be and which runners you're going to want to use. I ended up using 7 runners in the regatta, actually. And I only had 2 runners left by the end, because trying different runners to see what would work in those conditions.
So is that where experience really pays off? Your experience from working, all those years of sailing. You've been seen those conditions before. You kind of know what works in those conditions.
You kind of do, but then once you get out there, there's nothing like putting runners on and going for a sail and see how they feel, because it's not an exact science by any means. There's a lot of variables, and with that sticky snow, sometimes you might be better with a slipper runner, which is a snow plate runner, short, high crown, so you can steer around the drifts easier. And sometimes with as bumpy as the ice was under the snow, it's good to have a longer, flatter runner so you can bridge the bumps still. So it was really tricky to see. And then, so what you end up doing is watching who's winning in the other fleets. And then if you think you got something that might be able to match up, then you can change runners to try to work that angle. So.
Okay, so the first day, if I'm correct, after the first day, you were sitting in about 5th or 6th position?
4th place. I was in 4th place.
Okay, you're in 4th place. So
my finishes were 3, and then 7, and then a 5. So, and it was really tricky out there. I mean, for instance, when you jibe downwind, you would have to head up above a beam reach to get the boat going again. And once you got it going, then you could start trying to work your way more and more downwind. And if you had a good puff, well, God bless you, you could really head down a lot deeper, quicker, And the same thing upwind, out of tacks, you had to really reach the boat to get it moving before you could start pointing. And you had to be patient. You couldn't be, impatient and just sheet right in and try to make it work, and just, you had to keep looking around and work hard and keep trying to keep the boat going fast.
So you had a lot of good sailors in front of you after day one. Cheeler was in front of you, and I forget who else was up there. But so day 2, you 3 bullets. So what was the turnaround?
What was the turnaround? I think that I chose poorly in the races very often on Thursday. And I was impatient, and I just sheeted the sail in hard instead of doing what I know how to do to keep the boat going fast. The wind was lighter, and it was shiftier and puffier. And you had to find, if you look at the results, they were kind of all over the place. Nobody dominated on that day, because just depended on what side you were on and what air you got into, and that made it really hard, really tricky. J.R. Francis was in front of me, and so was John Curtis from Kingston. And the Canadian team was very impressive at this regatta. They worked as a team, like an Olympic effort. The 4 of them, 5 of them would go out there, and they would try different runners and sail against each other, try different tunes, sail against each other, sail the course, look where there was less snow and more clear ice. I mean, they really worked hard as a team. I was very impressed, and they continue that effort. There's no doubt they're going to be, in the winner's circle. They're very impressive this week.
And that's one of the things on the Road to Gold series that Andy Rice puts on with Sail Juice. They really talk about, working together. I mean, obviously, you come from an area that's a fairly, what we would consider a hotbed of ice boating. I mean, you think of some of the names that have come from your area, the Goujons, Greg Smith, yourself,
Matt Struble.
Matt Struble, yeah. So
Goodwin, Chip Cartwright, John Harper. I mean, Harry Defer, Jim Grogan. It just goes on and on. There's so many great sailors in this area for sure.
So how important is that to helping you get up to speed what you need to be?
Well, what I always say is, and I think it goes with our whole group. The faster I can make them, the faster I'm going to be. And I think they all feel the same way. Everybody's totally willing to share what they're doing with their runners and alignment and rig tune and sails and everything to try to make each other faster. And people who get in their little cliques and get secret about what they're doing and not help the guys around them, they're going to suffer. in the end. I mean, you know, you just got to let everybody have their day, and everybody does have their day around here. Oh my gosh, we got the, you know, Don Jones is this lightweight guy, 87 years old. When we get out in light air, he'll just smoke all of us in the Detroit area, even with all of us good guys out there. And he has all this unique equipment that he has just on his boat, and little tweaks that he's done over the years. And it's a real treat, and he loves it, you know.
Yeah, I've seen his boat. It's quite an interesting piece of art he's put together there.
That's right.
The other question I want to ask, so when you've been doing, I mean, how many years you've been on the ice boat DNing now?
I started when I'm 9 and I'm 59. So
when you're lining up now, and are you going to an event and you know, when you see the conditions that you're going to be fast, do you have that confidence that you've got the boat speed, that's not an issue?
I never take anything for granted. I mean, and I appreciate all the efforts, and I know how hard everybody else is working. And I never expect to win. And I think in the old days when I was younger, I wanted to win so bad that I think it was like an Achilles heel. It made it really hard for me to win because I just wanted it so bad. When I finally just, started relaxing and trying to just have solid, consistent finishes and make good decisions, don't take any high risk maneuvers, things have gotten better for me. And now that I've actually won, I've kind of, I feel like if it's someone else's turn to win, that's great. I'm happy for them, but I'm not going to not try. So I'm just going to get out there and do my best and let the cards fall where they may. And I think that attitude has made me a little bit more dangerous, a little more relaxed. I mean, you might not believe that if you try to talk to me in the morning, but
well, I get to talk to a lot of elite sailors, and the theme that comes up a lot of the times is it's not looking at your outcome, it's the process. So when they talk about when they're finished the race, they're not just concerned with first, fifth, 10th. It's the whole process, like what they learned from the race, what they're working towards, maybe different goals they had set just for that race. So that's kind of along the lines of what you're talking about.
Yeah, just to me, the one thing, another person I got to thank my wife and son, Trevor, who let me work at all this stuff really hard and don't make things hard for me at home. They know when I'm under stress and and have to work a lot of hours, and they pick up the load around the house and all that kind of stuff, which is fantastic. And my son Griffin came over, and he and I went through 15 sets of runners and put them all in my boat. With the alignment fixture, working together. So by having him with me, that meant I only had to get up and down off my hands and knees half as many times. And he wouldn't let me say, well, this is good enough. He absolutely was with me. And even if it was a 3,000 shim we need to put on to get each set of runners perfect, we did it. He would not let me stop until I was absolutely happy and perfect. And, I'll tell you another thing. On Thursday, when we were out there racing, I hit a bad crack out there in the last race, and I had been doing pretty well. And suddenly I was just getting past, and that's so rare for me. I just was really struggling with it. But when I came into shore, I put my boat on the alignment fixtures and double checked it, and everything was fine. So I went back into my head that I knew everything was okay. And once I have one set of runners aligned, I know all the rest of my runners are good. But I really, like I said, I want to thank Griffin for coming over and helping me shim all of my runners. I mean, it was great. It was a really, really, and it's good father-son bonding time,
Yeah. Nice to have a support crew. That's for sure. I guess we didn't, I'm just going to go back here because we didn't really get into it. So on the final day, 3-1, you went to bed, obviously Thursday night, 4th place. What was your mindset there? What did you change anything? Were there any other adjustments you made on the boat or equipment wise, or?
Well, Actually, well, the only thing that was different really was I changed to my flatter sail because it was pretty darn windy when we got to the lake on Friday morning. It was really windy. So it was blowing like, well, compared to what it was, and it was probably blowing 15 when we got there. So I did definitely started out with the flatter sail. I had the same rig set up and the same runners as I used in the third race. So, and I went out sailing with my practice runners on and got a good feel for the boat. And it's kind of strange, but I really have been feeling like my mast has been bending more on starboard than on port. So the only rig tune I made was I went a centimeter shorter on my starboard side stay. And that seemed to balance the boat out. So the mast felt to me, it could have been all psych, but and I don't know if one of my side stays might be just slightly longer than the other or what, but it really felt like that balanced the boat out when I had very similar bends on both sides. And man, I mean, on Friday, I guess the worst thing I did was in the first race, I went right off to the right shore, and I had J.R. Francis with me, and then Nicholas Malbach from the Montreal group there. He was going with me, or I'm not sure he knows wherever he's from, way out east in Canada. Anyway, we went out there to that corner, and when I tacked, I ended up in deep snow and in a big header, and all the boats on the left side, there was 7 or 8 boats from the left side that were ahead of me, and a couple boats from the right side even were ahead of me. So when I got to the first weather mark, I was like in 10th place, and I'm just like, well, I guess it's just not my turn, and that's okay, but let's keep working at it. And I just managed to play the right side downwind and get myself back in the race. And I end up coming all the way back and winning that race. It was absolutely incredible. And then the next race,
I just want to stop you there. So where did you make your big gains on that race? 10th around the weather mark. I mean, that's 9 boats ahead of you. So where do you feel that you made your gains?
I made my gains by really, the one thing I do when I do those practice laps is I get an idea what my angle is when I come around the leeward mark and when I come around the weather mark, because you're only going to get a couple of shifts per leg usually, or even no shifts, because, a leg can last 6 minutes, it can go by really, really fast. So if you come around the weather mark and look at what angle you are compared to shore, pick out some landmarks, and the same thing coming around the leeward mark, pick out some landmarks. So, if you're lifted or headed to start with, that can get you to decide whether to tack or to keep on going, based on what you've learned by going around the course. So, and I just kept playing the shifts, and it was really shifty. We had, the wind went to the right first, and the race committee started moving the whole starting line, and then the wind shifted back, and they end up moving back to the same spot we were and running races. And then the wind shifted to the left hard, and they were going to absolutely move the course again. But they knew with the limited staff they had that it would take 45 minutes to move the course. So again, they waited, and the wind came back, and they were actually able to run more races. I think the race committee did a miraculous, fantastic job. It was very, very, very good. And in the last race, I thought that I was actually ahead of T. I kind of was doing math in my head, and I thought I was ahead, but it actually turned out that I was tied with Thaler going into the last race. And I didn't really realize that. And started the race, and I tacked I started in the 1 position, and I tacked right away because I wanted to get over to where JR and T were. They started in the even numbers, and I wanted to cover them, and JR crossed in front of me, T crossed behind me, and I tacked, and I went upwind with those guys. And T kind of climbed over top of me, and the one Canadian guy was around the weather mark first, and T tacked around, was in second, and I was in third, and I followed those guys downwind, and I tried jibing down the middle, and it didn't work, and those guys made a little gain. And then when we went back upwind, I kept waiting for that big left puff shift to come back through. So I tacked back to the left again, and those guys went to the right, and they managed to one tack the weather mark and actually lay the weather mark. And so I ended up being a little further behind them, made a small gain downwind. I came in the last leeward mark. I was a full 100 yards behind TN, the Canadian guy. And and I was going up, following those guys going up the right side. And I just thought, man, that left puff shift has got to come through. And I tacked up the middle again, and I got a big righty. I mean, I was going almost at the weather mark on starboard tack from the middle. I'm like, this is good. And then as I went across, I started to get headed. So I tacked back and I crossed T by like 100 yards. And the Canadian guy was still going up to the right. And then all of a sudden, as I was going across, I got this big header. I mean, the boat just slowed down really fast, like I had no pressure at all. So I said, well, I'll just tack, and that way I'll cover T. So I'm going back to the left, and then I started getting headed, and I tacked and came right into the weather mark, pretty much on the port tack lay line. And I went inside, went around the Darling mark and came up and tacked around the mark, and I was first at the weather mark. But the Canadian came in from the far right side and was rolling really good and was able to roll me downwind, And we were on a pretty big left shift, and we're going downwind. And I thought, man, this is the lefty that I've been looking for, And so we finally got this pressure, and I'm pretty close to him. And I thought, man, I'm just going to go ahead and try and see if I can get any more lefty or any more pressure in the middle of the course. So I jibed back to the middle. And I came back in right on starboard tack lay line at the finish line and just nicked and got across the Canadian. I'm sorry, just not remembering his name.
I think it was Van Roos, Peter.
Yes,
Van
Rossum. Yep. And he had a couple really good finishes. He had a second and a third in the regatta. So he had some not so good finishes, but very unique character, working very hard at this, and a really nice guy, and but I managed to just sneak across him at the finish. And
he was up here when we had the Canadians in Thunder Bay a few years ago. I want to ask you, with ice boating, as you know, I ice boat also. Sometimes the difference between feeling a velocity header and a header is something I struggle with. How do you determine, like, sometimes when the boat's slowing down like that, is it a velocity header? Is the wind speed slowing down when the boat slows down, or is it the wind shifting? Is that something you intuitively feel, or?
My friend, it's the luck of the Irish.
Well,
it's
Irish
very
too.
tough to tell. You can't see the ripples on the water like you can in the summertime, and kind of see angles in the little cat's paws on the water. There's sometimes there's little snow blowing down the ice. That was not the case in this regatta. You can see a puff in the snow blowing down the ice, and that was not the case because this was pretty much completely snow covered. So it was pretty tough, and you just kind of had to use intuition and what you thought was going to happen, and have a little luck. And I definitely had a little luck.
Yeah. And I mean, the interesting thing with ice boats is, that no instrumentation. So it's so much feel, you got to have that feel.
It's a lot of feel. And it's a lot of remembering what angle you are compared to shore. I mean, it's just that simple. You can see the shoreline and kind of remember where you've been and what angle you are to shore, and if you're going fast or not. If you're at a good angle to the mark, just keep going, and all that kind of stuff. If you think you're going to get more, take a little hitch over and try to get more.
Now I know a buddy of mine, and you know him well too, Bruce Williams. He's been at it as long as you have, probably, and probably longer. But he loves those conditions because he feels like when it's shifty and bad ice, the more experienced sailors kind of shine in that. Is those conditions that you also enjoy when it's shifty and bad ice, as opposed to like just a speed race when you get the fast ice and people are sailing more the diamond course? Is that what you prefer, more the shifty bad ice type stuff?
I like all of it. I like trying to be prepared for all of it, have the boat prepared for all of it, the runners prepared, have me prepared for all of it. I mean, there's so much that goes into it, you know, and I like all of it. I really do. I've had success in high speed stuff, and I've had success in some light sticky stuff. And with the new plank and mast combination that I'm using and the new runners, man, I'm better in light air than I've been in a long time. So I feel like I'm real threat in those conditions now. I'm really excited about that. So.
Now, I know I've kept you a long time here, so I'm just going to maybe just some advice for newer sailors. I get a chance up here in Thunder Bay to work with a lot of people that are just getting introduced to ice boating and sailing for that matter. And they love to, they love the speeds of the, even before I want another question I want to ask, but I'll come back to that one. But, they almost get fixated on speed where they're just reaching back and forth speed. So when you go out and you're working, do you like practicing? Do you do a lot of time practicing maneuvers and your tacking, your jibing, your mark rounding, all those important skills?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I talk about this to people all the time because, most people have a lot of trouble with the leeward mark rounding, and I talk with them all the time about that. If the back end is sliding, you got too much sheet on. If the front end is sliding, you don't have enough sheet on. And I think it's really important to be easing the sheet as you're turning the boat past that beam reach. You don't want to just already have it out, because if you already have it out, then the front end sliding, and it's a real art. And the only way you get that art is by doing it. So I suggest to people to go around that leeward mark, go 100 yards, tack, go 100 yards, then come downwind and try to hit the leeward mark at the right angle and practice your leeward mark rounding. Go upwind and do it. Just do boxes and work at it. I mean, when I was out on Walled Lake this year, I didn't think my leeward mark roundings were very good. So I would actually, after a race, just go out and do a couple more of them while people were, lining up for the next scrub race, and just practice those mark roundings. Work on playing the shifts, work on getting the tack smoother, the jibe smoother, all those things that can help you. And boy, you never learn more than on a small shifty lake. I mean, because it kind of forces you into doing some things. And if you can get good at that, you'll be, even better when you get out on a big course, for sure.
And just the other question I want to ask, because a lot of the sailors like yourself that I talk to are high performance sailors, Glen Ashby racing, speed machines. And they always talk about, the mentality, the courage, to race an ice boat, involves, I know myself, like people say, are you ever afraid when you're out there? I say, I'm afraid all the time. Like, it's like, it's, you're full on, like it's not, wouldn't call it relaxing sailing, and so I wonder how you deal with that, like the mentality, especially, you're racing 40, 50 other boats. Sometimes the ice conditions aren't perfect. The wind can be strong. How do you deal with that mentally?
Well, you got to remember to breathe, right? Real deep breaths in and out slowly. When we start to get panicked, we tend to have short, shallow breaths. And when those times are coming, you need all the oxygen in the system you can get. So you want to keep breathing for sure. I mean, that's what my sports psychologist told me was the most important thing for me to work on is breathing, so you keep going. And actually, when I'm going fast, I get relaxed. And the way I think speed is your friend. Once you're going really fast, the puffs don't have as big of effect on the boat as when you're going slow. So I always say speed is your friend. Always err on the side of speed. Keep the boat going fast. And, when I'm sailing, I steer with my knees. So even if I hit some crazy bump or something, tiller's not getting jerked out of my hand. It's held straight right between my knees. So when I come back down on the ice, I'm going straight, and the boat keeps going straight. I sheet the sail with both hands and use the main sheet over top of the tiller to hold the tiller between my knees. The only time I take the tiller out between my knees is I'm going around a mark or tacking or jibing, and it's just experience. The more you do it, it has to become like an instinct what to do. If you have to think about it before you react, it's going to be too slow. And of course, the natural reaction for people who are new to ice boating is when they get hit by a puff and go up on a hike, they kind of grab onto that sheet tighter. And that's the exact opposite of what you need to do. And you need to automatically be easing and slight correct steering without even thinking about it. And the only way that happens is by doing it a lot.